Okay, I am going to go ahead and use the brush file that I had before. I'm going to throw some stuff away here, but we're going to use this as sort of the beginning basis of our new Photoshop composition. And yeah, so I'm just getting rid of everything that is unimportant, and what I'm doing now is I'm saving out a copy of that mask layer as a new file so that I can just start fresh, and I'm calling it paint peel or something like that. Okay, and what I'll end up doing is sort of using this in addition to the brush um, with the other things that I'm trying to do. So I'm going to place some linked assets, some images that you can see me sort of use to build, and I'm going to get, I guess, a picture of a building. Oh, actually, it's a aerial view of skyscrapers. I'm going to do show you like how you can build something, and I'm using the brooding category of conceptual ideas, I guess. And this file, I think, really needs some organic matter sort of in the background of it, like through filters and brushes and stuff like that, because whenever I think of decaying cities, I think of them sort of, being post-apocalyptic and overrun with organic matter and, so forth. And I'm not going to shy away at all from making this very painterly, so that it looks painterly. I'm going to use this fire too. I'm not trying to set things on fire necessarily, but fire can a lot of times provide a really great texture. And I think that this is also, there's a way for you to have the feeling that something has been destroyed by fire, that it's you know, in danger, without actually have something exploding on the screen. So I'm gonna kind of show you my ideas of how to do that. So okay, so these are my three, and then I've got the little sort of cracked up damage down there. First thing that I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put um, an overlay on this, but the problem is that it's just doing an overlay on the just doing an overlay down there on the damage part. And I think what's going to have to happen here, I'm doing layer comps right now, by the way, if you're wondering, and layer comps are things that are going to show you a very specific place that you had saved in your basically like instances, like sort of snapshots. So anyway, I'm moving my file up here so that I can have an overlay over the top of that organic matter. I'm making another snapshot or comp, layer comp, so that whenever I use that layer comp, it'll automatically go back to the state of what was visible and not visible. Okay, and so now I think I still need more organic matter, except that I need a different range of color, and I need some, I just need it to be sort of more like an abstracted kind of texture in the background and not necessarily something that is recognizable. So I'm going to do some layering effects with these distorted same images, so they're going to be in the same color range, and I'm just going to create something that, otherwise, a painter might be able to create with brush strokes. Okay, so I'm going to fool around with this until I get it right. And then I'm lowering the visibility of it, and I'm going to I made a copy of it. I'm going to transform the second version of it so that it's rotated, and you can really start to see this kind of, really texturized, abstracted, sort of painterly feeling coming into play. And one of the things and that's kind of cool, so that it starts to look a little bit more organic. One of the problems I have is this hard edge that's on the left edge here of the top transformation I just made. So I'm going to feather this dramatically so that it's a soft edge, and I'm going to mask it Actually, I'm going to inverse it and then I'm going to mask it, and so that that hard line goes away. And so now I've got something like this. I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot. Okay, and we're starting to look like we have some degradation. I just created 2 new layers, by the way. I paused it and created 2 new layers from that original, distorted them. I wanted more blue, so I distorted them so that the sky would be more prominent in the distortions. And so now we have this combination. And now I'm going to go ahead and show some fire, and I need this for texture, but it's too heavy-handed the way it is, so I'm going to do different level of opacity, and you can start to feel like it's almost like there's smoke or something, and it's almost like stained. So I'm going to try an overlay on this and knock the opacity back significantly, and it almost looks like there's something rising up, like fire rising up from down below, but I don't want it to be like, you know, something so obvious as, you know, an explosion in, you know, a downtown area. That's not really what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to make that kind of statement, but I'm just trying to get texture on the buildings, and it would be a texture that you're sort of familiar with. And then I'm going to duplicate it yet again, because I think that another overlay, or not overlay, but layer style. So I'm going to screen this and knock it back as well. And then it starts to do something very interesting with the buildings. And you can see that I'm just sort of like gradually building my document up, and this is just to give you some ideas of how you can use layer styles and multiple layers and transformation tools to actually like really create textures. Let's label this. Okay, and now I'm gonna duplicate my buildings, and because the fire is just like too overwhelming, and now I need to start doing some more interesting stuff. I'm gonna like lower some of the opacity and get an overlay in there, because I need to really start to get a lot of color and texture, because I'm going to be working with filters and brushes and so forth. And now let me just type this and this. Okay, let's duplicate it again. All right, and now you start to see with the overlay that I have now, you start to see like how that building, it feels like it's sort of enveloped and wrapped in fire, but it's not on fire. You know, it's like got that feeling of urgency. So I'm going to put some filters, some smart filters from the filter gallery on here that are going to really give it more of a brush feeling too, with some different texture. And here's the trick with this, is you really have to layer the effects. If you just apply, you know, 1 or 2 even sometimes of these filters, you can totally tell what they are, and they don't look good, and anyway, they're not going to give you the effects that you want. So I can actually get to a place with a combination of these filters that will make it so that this really feels like something that I have painted, you know, with watercolor, a combination of like watercolor and inks and charcoal. All right, this really feels like something that I can easily have done as a work of art by hand. Okay, let me go ahead and take a snapshot of that filter, or set of filters, I should say. Okay, and then you really start to get a sense of like the depth of space from all of the high contrast and the heavy levels of saturation. And this part, I'm having a problem with it. It's a little too bright, but I don't want to lose the brightness that's on the building, so I'm going to put a mask. I'm going to put a layer mask, and so it knocks the brightness of the fire down just in that section of the building, and I think that it looks a lot better. All right, so now I'm going to save another snapshot, duplicate this again, and this time I am going to go again to a gallery, but it's going to be the blur gallery. Okay, and by the way, the blur tools are awesome in Photoshop now. You can do so much, like just with even a field blur, you can do so much. And then the iris blur, it's really terrific. Now, one thing you do need to know that is on, and the tilt is going to be really good for me because of the angle of my, you know, 3-point perspective drawing that I have here, or image. One of the things that you need to realize is that the smart blurs are tremendous. They're really cool because you can always go back and undo them and modify them. However, on really big files, like this render, when I have to render out this blur, it is going to take a long time. It's a lot of mathematics that it's going to have to do. So be patient. You might even have to get up and get a cup of coffee if you do a lot of blurring. So, and I'm going to pick high quality because you can really see the difference, like when it goes to white versus the high quality, it preserves a lot of the color and the saturation. Okay, so, all right, I went ahead and did that. You didn't have to wait for it, but it took a long time to do that. So just be aware that if you're doing non-destructive blurring, and I'm going to do it again, to get a different kind of overlay with the pin light, and it's really going to feel sort of like a much more like hand-rendered environment this way. But anyway, if you're going to do this, just be aware that it does take a long time to do the blurs. Great effects, but long time. Okay, here. All right, now I need to, I'm doing another one. I'm going to try doing dark in color on this one. And then now you can really start to see that it's really, it almost feels muddy, but it feels like there's been like something that's got like the foundation of ink on the page. Ink, paint, and as I said, like a combination of charcoal. Let's label this. Okay, and then I'm going to adjust some of the transparency or the visibility so that you can see, and then so that I can make my layer comp. Okay. I'm going to collapse all of my effects to give me more room in my panel. And I'm going to make now a new layer for a brush. The brush that you saw me make if you watched the other demo, and it's based off of the mask that I brought into this original document. So I'm going to use this, and it took a second, and I just created with several different of the brush sizes and scatter tools and stuff to create this, and I'm going to use exclusion so that it actually sort of puts some almost like ink stains in the buildings. And then I'm using the brush to add like a cracking, decaying facade. And now I need to add a color layer effect because it's like far too red for me. And I want to make this a little eerier so that it's got sort of like a green, an unnatural yellow-green cast, sort of like the yellow that you would see before like a tornado, if you've ever lived in one of those places. Okay, now I'm walking through, as you can see, all of my different snapshots in the layer comps, which is very cool because I can also do things like output that to PDFs and JPEGs. And I want to look at this up close to make sure that the quality is really what I'm expecting it. And I'm sort of fading this in and out now for you. And, you know, I'm pretty happy with the way that this is turning out. Okay. So now if I want to run a script for layer comps, I can send it out to a PDF. I have to tell it a destination and let it run. And it's going to take a little bit of time. And here it is, the final result. And you can just navigate through these. You can also send this PDF to anybody and say, here are my different versions of this project.